When the angels appeared in the sky 2,000 years ago, they said, "Glory to God and peace on earth." 110 years ago, Pope Benedict asked for the same thing. The Great War had started, and Benedict knew that the people needed peace more than anything. On December 7th, 1914, Benedict issued a plea to the world powers, asking them, let's not have gunfire the night the angels sang. He was ignored. The powers of the world wanted to win more than they wanted peace. But that just set the stage for a miracle that is called now the Christmas Truce of 1914. On Christmas Eve, machine gunner named Bruce Barnesfather was in the trenches, and he was weary. He was so cold and tired and bored. They weren't shooting at the moment, so instead he was chain smoking and eating stale crackers. He said he was sitting in mud in that trench, and it was bitter cold outside. And they were so disappointed, all of these soldiers, because they thought this war was just going to last a few months, and they were going to be home by Christmas. But here it was, Christmas Eve, and they were still there. About 10 p.m., Bruce heard something. He heard a sound he had not heard before, and he leaned over to the soldier next to him, and he said, "What is that? What is that sound?" And they listened together, and they realized it was the Germans in the trench across the way singing Silent Night. As they continued to sing, many of the British soldiers began to sing as well. And after a while, they were singing together, or they were singing to one another. You see, the trenches were so close that the soldiers could actually talk when there was no gunfire sound. Sometimes they would holler across if there was a German soldier who knew English or an English soldier who knew German, and they would ask about their sweethearts back home, or they would ask about the football scores, or what's the weather like in London right now. So they had been hollering back and forth across this divide called no man's land. And this night, Christmas Eve, 1914, they were singing Christmas carols to one another. And then came a shout from the German side. A voice said, "Come over here." And then a British sergeant said, "You come halfway, and I'll come halfway." And then the men began to pour out of the trenches, walking with their hands up to the center of this no man's land. And they met in peace, in the worst conditions of the bloodiest war ever at that time. They met together and they shook hands and they exchanged names and they shared their cigarettes and their candy and they sang songs together. And they said it was surreal. There was a man named Frederick Heath who said it was so strange to talk to these people who he had been trying to kill a few hours earlier. And he said the moments when they all sang together was just magical, one of the most beautiful moments he had ever experienced in his life. Now, how interesting that this peace on earth that was occurring right there in the battlefield was not decreed by Rome. There was no Caesar Augustus or any other world power that was calling for a ceasefire. This was just people like you and me, people who saw the humanity in one another. There are stories, whatever they had, and they had a game. And I couldn't verify it, but I heard that the Germans won 3-2 because the British might win a war, but they don't win the World Cup. And then they were so excited to find out that one of those German soldiers was a barber. And if you gave him a little tin of corned beef, he would cut your hair. So they lined up for haircuts. They were having a wonderful time together. And another soldier said, "Those Germans are fine fellows." They liked each other. Not everybody liked what was happening, though, because when the generals in the field found out what was happening, they put a stop to it as soon as they could. But what's so amazing is it didn't just happen in one place. This happened in pockets all along the Western Front as simultaneously people came out of the trenches to meet one another. And in some places, even let them collect their dead and send them home for burial. Incredible story to the testament of the goodness of humanity. If we just have a chance to get to know one another, to meet one another, to shake each other's hands, to look into each other's eyes, to learn about our families, and in this time of such great division in our own nation, it does us good to remember how these people who were in the worst conditions, in muddy trenches, in the bloodiest war ever up to that time, could find in themselves the capacity to look across no man's land and see the humanity on the other side. Because there's something that we all have hardwired into us, and it is that need to be connected, the need to be known and to be loved and to be appreciated. And that is why, even though church, sometimes we have a bad rap, sometimes we don't do things perfectly, we do that well. We connect. We are a place where you can be known, where you can be loved, where you can always be welcomed, a place you can come back to again and again, who is going to, hopefully every week, set us anew on a path toward peace, no matter what has happened in the last 6 days, to remind us that we are all one family, that we have one divine parent who has placed in us the need to be together. What a beautiful gift it is that we have. And what a beautiful memory from these soldiers from 110 years ago who today show us how to cross the aisle, how to find the humanity in one another, to set our divisions and differences aside. We don't all have to agree. We don't have to believe the same things, but we have to respect one another. That's a lesson we can continue to learn today and into 2025.